The doctor asked me one simple question. Margaret, what do you do for yourself? I was 76 years old. I had spent more than 50 years taking care of my husband, my children, my parents, and my grandchildren. But when she asked me to name one thing I did just for myself, I couldn't, and that frightened me, because for the first time I realized I knew exactly what everyone in my family needed. I just had no idea what I needed anymore. My name is Margaret Collins. I live in Raleigh, North Carolina, and for most of my adult life, I have been taking care of someone. I became a wife at 23, a mother at 25. My oldest daughter, Linda, was born first. Sarah came 3 years later. My husband, Robert, worked long hours when the girls were young. I worked part-time at a dental office. We didn't have much money in those early years. We weren't poor, but every dollar had a purpose. There were groceries, school clothes, mortgage payments, car repairs, dentist bills. Something always needed replacing. I became very good at deciding what could wait. Usually, what could wait was me. If the girls needed shoes, they got shoes. If I needed shoes, mine could last another season. If there was one piece of chicken left at dinner, I gave it to Robert or one of the girls. If everyone wanted different things on Saturday, my plans disappeared first. I didn't resent any of it. That's important. I loved being a mother. I loved my family. Sacrifice didn't feel like sacrifice when I was young. It simply felt like motherhood. If someone needed something, I provided it. That's what family does. I said that phrase hundreds of times, maybe thousands. That's what family does. At first, it meant we help one another. So somewhere along the way, I quietly changed the meaning. It became, everyone else's needs come before mine. Nobody told me to believe that. I just did. My own mother lived that way. She was always the last person to sit down at dinner. She ate after everyone else had food. She wore coats long after they should have been replaced. If we asked what she wanted for Christmas, she'd say, "Don't waste your money on me." As a girl, I thought that was what a good mother looked like. So when I became one, I copied her. Robert sometimes noticed. One evening when the girls were teenagers, he came into the kitchen and found me eating dinner alone. Everyone else had already eaten. "Why didn't you sit with us?" "I was finishing the laundry." "The laundry wasn't going anywhere." "I know." He looked at my plate. "You always do that." "Do what?" "Make yourself last." I laughed. Someone has to be last. I remember those words now. Someone has to be last. For decades, I never questioned whether that was actually true. By the time I was in my 50s, the girls had mostly grown. Linda was married. Sarah had moved into her own apartment. For the first time in years, I had more freedom. At 52, my friend Nancy called me. Nancy and I had known each other since our 30s. She had found a travel package to Savannah. 4 days. She was excited. "You should come with me." I laughed. "I can't." "Why?" "My mother has appointments that month." "All 4 days?" "No." "Then come." I asked how much it cost. That was easier than admitting I wanted to go. Nancy mailed me the brochure. I still remember opening it at the kitchen table. Beautiful old streets. Large trees covered in Spanish moss. Restaurants. Historic houses. A riverboat. I wanted to go. Not mildly. I really wanted to go. Robert saw the brochure. "You should do it. My mother has 2 appointments. I can take her." "You're working." "I can rearrange things." "She prefers me." "Margaret." He looked at me. "Go." I almost did. For 2 days I imagined packing a suitcase. Then I called Nancy. "I don't think I can." "Are you sure?" "There'll be another time." She went without me. I put the brochure inside a cookbook. I don't know why I kept it. Maybe throwing it away would have forced me to admit I was disappointed. "There'll be another time." I was very good at saying things like that. The strange part was that nobody had asked me to stay home. Robert wanted me to go. My mother would have been fine. I told myself I had no choice. Looking back, I did. I simply couldn't give myself permission to choose something I wanted when somebody else might need me. As my parents grew older, caregiving became a larger part of my life. My father died first. My mother lived another 8 years. At first, she needed help occasionally, then occasionally became regularly. I picked up groceries, organized medications, paid bills, drove her to appointments, cooked meals, called insurance companies. My sister lived several states away. She offered to come more often. I usually told her, "It's easier if I do it." That sentence became another favorite. It's easier if I do it. Sometimes that was true. Sometimes it wasn't. But doing things myself gave me control. It also gave me something else, a sense of importance. I didn't understand that yet. My mother died when I was 61. I loved her deeply. I still miss her. But after the funeral, something happened that made me feel ashamed. I felt relieved. The feeling arrived before I could stop it. For the first time in years, I didn't have to keep my phone beside me at night. There were no prescriptions to refill, no appointments to remember, no emergency grocery runs, no worrying about whether she had eaten. I felt lighter. Then I hated myself for feeling lighter. What kind of daughter feels relief after her mother dies? It took me years to understand that grief and relief can live in the same person. Relief didn't mean I wanted my mother gone. It meant I had been tired. But I didn't allow myself to say that then. Instead, I found someone else to take care of. By that point, Linda had children. Sarah would have children a few years later. I became Grandma Margaret. And Grandma Margaret was useful, very useful. Need someone to watch the children? Call Mom. Someone sick? Call Mom. Need dinner? Mom will bring something. School pick up? Mom can do it. I loved my grandchildren. Still do. But looking back, I can see how quickly I filled the empty space my mother left. I went from being needed by an aging parent to being needed by young grandchildren. I barely paused between those identities. There was always someone. Then Robert became ill. It began with fatigue, then tests, then more tests. Eventually, our lives became organized around his health. Medication in the morning, another pill with lunch, appointments, special diets, hospital visits, sleepless nights. I learned words I never wanted to know. Robert hated depending on me. One night, I was helping him back into bed. He looked at me and said, "You need to rest." "I'm fine." "No, you're not." "I am." "Margaret." "Robert, please." "I'm fine." That became my answer to almost everything. "How are you?" "I'm fine." "Are you tired?" "I'm fine." "Do you need help?" "I'm fine." It was easier than telling the truth. The truth was complicated. I was tired. I was scared. I was angry that this was happening. I felt guilty for being angry. I loved my husband. I wanted to care for him. And sometimes I wanted one day when nobody needed me. All those things were true at once, but I only allowed myself one version. "I'm fine." Robert died when I was 72. We had been married 49 years. The first months afterward were strange. People came constantly. Food arrived, flowers, cards. My daughters checked on me. Then, slowly, everyone returned to their lives. That's what happens. Linda told me, "Mom, now you need to take care of yourself." Sarah said the same thing. I nodded. Of course, but I didn't know what that meant. Take care of myself how? I ate. I slept. I paid bills. I went to church. I kept the house clean. Wasn't that taking care of myself? 4 years passed. Then came that doctor's appointment. "What do you do for yourself?" I couldn't answer. Driving home, I kept thinking about it. At a red light, I almost laughed. It seemed ridiculous. I could tell you Linda's work schedule. I knew which grandchild had soccer on Tuesday. I knew Sarah hated driving to appointments downtown. I knew what everyone liked for dinner. I knew birthdays, allergies, preferences, problems. But what did Margaret enjoy? What did Margaret need? The light turned green. The car behind me honked. I drove home. That afternoon I took out a notebook. At the top of one page I wrote, things I do every week. Watch grandchildren. Grocery shopping. Help Linda. Call Sarah. Church. Clean house. Cook. Bills. Pick up prescriptions. Laundry. Then I turned the page. Things I enjoy. I stared at it. Coffee? Did that count? Reading. I used to read. Gardening. Maybe. I couldn't think of much else. The blank page bothered me more than it should have. 76 years old. Surely I knew what I liked, but the question felt unfamiliar. What do you want? What do you enjoy? What would you choose if nobody else needed anything? Those weren't questions I had practiced answering. A few weeks later, Linda asked me to watch the grandchildren on Saturday. Of course, I said, no hesitation. Friday evening, she called. Mom, plans changed. We don't need you tomorrow. Okay? Sorry. Don't be silly. Saturday morning arrived. I woke early, made coffee. Then I stood in the kitchen. Nothing was scheduled. I should have enjoyed that. Instead, I felt irritated. I cleaned the bathroom, changed the sheets, went to the grocery store even though I didn't need much. Around noon, I realized I was angry with Linda. That made no sense. She hadn't done anything wrong. Then the truth arrived. I hadn't simply been looking forward to seeing the grandchildren. I had been looking forward to being needed. There was a difference. That realization embarrassed me. For years, I had told myself my family depended on me. Maybe part of me depended on them depending on me. If somebody needed me, the day had purpose. If I was helping, I knew who I was. Mother, grandmother, caregiver, helper. But on an empty Saturday, who was I? That question frightened me. Around that time, Nancy and I began having lunch more often. One afternoon, I told her about the doctor. She laughed. Not cruelly. You couldn't answer? No. Margaret. I know. Then she became quiet. Do you remember Savannah? I looked at her. Of course. You really wanted to go. I had Mom. Nancy shook her head. Your mother told you she'd be fine. I don't remember that. I do. I looked down at my coffee. She continued. Robert told you to go too. I remember that. Sometimes nobody was asking you to sacrifice. That sentence landed harder than I expected. Nancy continued gently. You just thought that's what a good woman did. I became defensive. You don't know everything I had to do. I know. I had children, parents, Robert. I know. They needed me. I know, Margaret. She reached across the table. I'm not saying you shouldn't have cared for them. Then what are you saying? That sometimes you had a choice. I didn't like that, because if I had no choice, there was nothing to examine. If I had choices, then I had to ask why I made them. That evening, I found the old cookbook. The Savannah brochure was still inside, 24 years old. The paper had yellowed slightly. I opened it. There were the trees, the old streets, the river. I thought about the woman I had been at 52. She wanted 4 days away. Her husband told her to go. Her mother told her she'd be fine. And Margaret stayed home. Why? Because somewhere inside me was a rule. A good wife is available. A good mother is available. A good daughter is available. A good grandmother is available. Always. And if you choose yourself when somebody else might need you, you're selfish. Nobody had ever said those exact words to me. I had simply lived as if they were true. A few days later, I pulled out the family albums. I wasn't looking for anything in particular. Birthdays, Christmas, graduations, beach vacations. The girls when they were small. Robert with hair. That made me laugh. I began noticing something. I wasn't in many candid photographs. Of course, I was usually taking them. There was Christmas morning. Robert on the floor with the girls. I took the picture. A birthday party. Everyone around the cake. I took the picture. Thanksgiving. Everyone at the table. I took the picture. Then I found a photograph from a beach vacation. The girls were teenagers. Robert was sitting in a beach chair. Linda and Sarah were laughing. And there I was, standing behind everyone. I had towels over one arm, a bag over my shoulder, sunscreen in one hand, snacks in the other. I laughed. It was such a perfect picture of me. Everyone else was at the beach. Margaret was operating the beach. Then, unexpectedly, I started crying. Not because the photograph was sad. We had been happy, but I saw something I hadn't seen before. I had been present for everyone else's life, but I wasn't always present in my own. I was behind the camera, in the kitchen, packing the bags, holding the towels, cleaning afterward, making sure everyone else could enjoy the moment. Again, I want to be careful here. I don't regret caring for my family. I don't wish I had ignored my children. I don't wish I had abandoned my parents. And I would care for Robert again. The regret is different. I wish I had understood there was room for me too. I wish I had sat down sooner, gotten into more photographs, taken the trip sometimes, said, I'm tired, or I can't today, or I want this. Those sentences seemed selfish then. Now they seem human. My first real test came with a gardening class. I saw a notice at the community center, Thursday afternoons, 6 weeks. I had always liked flowers. Robert handled most of our garden because I was usually busy with something else. I signed up. The first Thursday morning, Linda called. Mom, any chance you can watch the kids this afternoon? The answer came automatically. I stopped. My gardening class. For a few seconds, I considered skipping it. It was only a class. The grandchildren mattered more. Then I remembered Nancy. Sometimes you had a choice. I can't today. My heart actually started beating faster. There was a short silence. Then Linda said, Okay, I'll ask Mark's mom. That was it. I almost laughed. No accusation. No disappointment. Nobody said, Margaret, after everything we've done for you, the world didn't collapse. I can help tomorrow if you need me. We're good. Have fun. Have fun. I went to the gardening class. For the first half hour, I felt guilty. I kept checking my phone. Nobody called. Eventually, the instructor began talking about herbs, then soil, then pruning. I forgot to feel guilty for a while. I liked it. Not because it was useful, not because anyone needed me to know about plants. I simply enjoyed being there. That felt almost revolutionary. Afterward, I bought myself a small rosemary plant. I put it on the kitchen windowsill. Every time I looked at it, I remembered something. Nobody I loved had suffered because I chose myself for 2 hours. So I tried again. Coffee with Nancy. Reading before the kitchen was completely clean. Buying flowers for myself. Taking a walk without turning it into an errand. Small things. Nothing dramatic. And every time, guilt arrived. Shouldn't you be doing something? Does Linda need help? You haven't called Sarah today. The laundry isn't finished. Eventually, I realized something about guilt. Sometimes guilt tells us we've done something wrong. But sometimes guilt is simply what we feel when we stop obeying an old rule. My old rule said, Margaret comes last. Breaking that rule felt wrong before it began feeling healthy. Then, one afternoon, Nancy called. I have a proposition. That sounds dangerous. Savannah. I laughed. What about it? I'm going back. When? October. Then she paused. Come with me. For a moment, I was 52 again. My mind immediately began working. What about Linda? What if Sarah needs something? 4 days. Hotel costs. My plants, the house. I began to say, I don't know. Then I looked toward the kitchen. The old Savannah brochure was still sitting on the counter. I had left it there after finding it. 24 years. I suddenly heard my younger voice. There'll be another time. I was 76 now. Maybe there would be another time. I hoped so. But I finally understood that hope wasn't a reason to keep postponing myself. When do we leave? Nancy laughed. Is that a yes? Yes. I expected guilt. It came. Of course it did. I told Linda. Good for you. I told Sarah. Finally. Apparently, everyone had been waiting for Margaret to catch up. Savannah wasn't magical. I want to say that because stories sometimes make change sound too perfect. My feet hurt after the first day. It rained one afternoon. Nancy snored. She denies this. I called my daughters too often. On the second day, Linda finally said, King on us. I wasn't checking. You've called twice. I was saying hello. Go enjoy Savannah. So I tried. One morning, Nancy and I sat outside with coffee. The air was warm. Spanish moss moved slightly above us. People passed on the sidewalk. Nobody knew me. Nobody needed me. There were no grandchildren waiting, no medication schedule, no appointment, no dinner I needed to prepare. For most of my life, that would have made me feel unnecessary. That morning, it felt different. It felt like freedom. I sat there and thought about Robert. I wished he could see me. He would probably say, "Took you long enough." That made me smile. When I returned home, my life didn't become completely different. I still helped Linda. I still drove Sarah occasionally. I still watched my grandchildren. I still cooked too much food and sent everyone home with containers. I am still me. The difference is that I check whether Margaret is available before I volunteer Margaret. That sounds almost silly, but I never did it before. If someone asks for help, I look at my own plans. Sometimes I say yes. Sometimes, not today. Sometimes, I can do Friday instead. And something remarkable keeps happening. My family adjusts. They find another solution. They ask someone else. They manage. I had spent decades believing I was the only thing standing between the people I loved and disaster. Apparently, they are more capable than I gave them credit for, and perhaps I am allowed to be more than useful. That has been the hardest lesson. At 76, I don't regret being a caregiver. I don't regret motherhood. I don't regret the years I spent helping my parents. I don't regret caring for Robert when he was sick. Love often asks something from us. Time, energy, patience, sacrifice. That's part of loving people. But I made one mistake. I thought loving other people required leaving myself out. For more than 50 years, I believed someone had to come last, and I volunteered for the position. Now I understand there doesn't always have to be a last person. Taking care of myself doesn't steal care from my daughters. Resting doesn't mean I love my grandchildren less. Wanting something doesn't make me selfish. Saying no doesn't erase all the times I said yes. And my value isn't measured by how exhausted I am at the end of the day. A few months after Savannah, our family gathered for Linda's birthday. Nothing fancy. Dinner at her house. Cake. Too many people in the kitchen. After dinner, Linda said, "Let's get a picture." Automatically, I reached for my phone. I'll take it. My granddaughter looked at me. "Grandma, get in the picture. Someone has to take it. We'll use the timer." My first instinct was to argue. Then I stopped. Of course, the timer. We placed the phone on a shelf. Everyone squeezed together. Linda sat on one side of me, Sarah on the other. The grandchildren crowded around. Someone yelled, 10 seconds! Nobody knew where to look. One grandson made a ridiculous face. Sarah started laughing. Then everyone laughed. The camera clicked. Later that night, I was home alone. Linda sent the photograph to our family group. I opened it. It wasn't a perfect picture. My eyes were almost closed. One grandchild was looking away. Linda was still laughing, but I loved it, because there I was, not behind the camera, not carrying towels, not serving dinner, not washing dishes, not helping anyone, just Margaret, sitting in the middle of the people she loved. For more than 50 years, I had taken care of the people inside photographs like that. I don't regret it. I'd do much of it again. But at 76, I finally learned something I wish I had understood much earlier. I belong in the picture, too. I belong at the table before everyone has finished eating. I belong on the trip. I belong in the chair with a book, even when there are dishes in the sink. I belong in my own plans, my own choices, my own life. Maybe you're someone like me. Maybe you've spent years being the dependable one, the mother everyone calls, the wife who handles everything, the daughter who takes care of the parents, the grandmother who always says yes. Maybe you love those people deeply. You don't have to stop. But perhaps you should ask yourself the question that stopped me at 76. What do you do for yourself? And if you can't answer immediately, don't feel ashamed. I couldn't either. Just don't wait another 50 years to start finding out, because caring for yourself doesn't mean you have stopped caring for everyone else. It simply means you finally understand that you are one of the people worth caring for. For most of my life, I thought being a good woman meant making sure everyone else had a place before I took mine. Now I know better. There was always a place for me. I just had to stop giving it away. And these days, when the family gathers and someone reaches for the camera, I don't automatically stand up anymore. I stay where I am. I move a little closer. I smile, and I make sure I'm in the picture. If you've spent much of your life taking care of everyone else, I'd love to know what you've learned about taking care of yourself, too. Share your experience in the comments. Your story may help someone who still believes choosing themselves means loving their family less. And if you'd like to hear more reflections about aging, family regret, and the lessons we sometimes learn too late, subscribe and join me again for the next story.